Do you know what is quietly happening inside your mind right now, as you listen to this? Right now, in this very moment, something is occurring that most people never stop to notice. Your mind is beginning to slow down, not because you are forcing it to, not because you are trying, but simply because you are here, in the quiet, in the dark, with nowhere else to be and nothing else to do. And in that stillness, something very old and very gentle is beginning to surface. Something that was always there, underneath all the noise, underneath all the rushing and the planning and the worrying. Something that has been waiting very patiently for exactly this kind of quiet. Welcome to the channel Thoughts of Alan Watts. And tonight we are going to do something simple. We are simply going to think together, slowly, without urgency, without any particular destination in mind. We are going to let the mind move the way water moves when there is no wind, finding its own level, settling into its own depth, becoming clear in the way that water becomes clear when it is finally allowed to be still. You don't need to follow every word closely tonight. You don't need to remember anything. You don't need to take notes or arrive at any conclusions. Simply let the words come into you the way music comes into a room, filling the space without demanding anything, present without insisting, there without requiring your attention to be useful. That is all. That is all that is required of you tonight. And as you settle into that understanding, as the body begins to release the grip it has been holding all day, as the muscles soften and the breath slows and the long accumulated weight of the hours begins to dissolve, notice, if you like, how naturally the mind begins to open, not because you opened it, simply because you stopped closing it. That is one of the first things to understand about the mind. It doesn't need to be opened. It is already open. What we spend most of our lives doing is closing it, narrowing it, focusing it down into the thin beam of a searchlight, sweeping back and forth over the terrain of our worries and our plans and our calculations, missing the vast darkness all around it, the darkness in which the most interesting things live. Tonight, let the searchlight rest. Let the beam soften and spread and diffuse until it becomes more like moonlight than spotlight, gentle and ambient and falling on everything equally. The moonlight doesn't choose what to illuminate. It simply falls, and everything it touches becomes, for a moment, beautiful and strange and worth looking at. You are worth looking at, not in the way a mirror looks at you, cataloging and comparing and measuring against some standard. I mean looked at the way the night looks at you, completely, without judgment, with a kind of steady and impersonal affection that asks nothing in return. The night doesn't need you to be anything in particular. The stars don't require you to be successful or productive or even awake. They shine regardless. They have been shining since long before anyone was here to see them, and they will be shining long after the last human eye has closed for the last time. And in all of that shining, in all of that patient, impersonal radiance, there is something that feels, if you let it, remarkably like love. But here is the strange part. We spend so little time simply receiving that love. We spend so little time simply allowing ourselves to exist in the universe the way a star exists, without apology, without justification, without the constant anxious performance of being someone who deserves to take up space. Most people have never considered this. Most people go through their entire lives with a quiet, low-level, almost imperceptible sense that their existence requires justification, that they must earn the right to be here, that somewhere there is a ledger, and their name is in it, and the column of what they have accomplished must always be longer than the column of what they have consumed, what they have failed at, what they have left undone. And this sense, this invisible weight, is so constant and so familiar that we stopped noticing it long ago. It became the background hum of our lives. Like the sound of traffic, that you have lived beside for so long that you only notice it when it stops. Tonight, it can stop. Just for a little while. Just for the space of this breath, and the next one, and the next. You don't need to justify your existence tonight. You are here. The universe made you, out of the same hydrogen that makes stars, the same carbon that makes planets, the same improbable chemistry that makes everything alive. You are not separate from what made you. You never were. This was one of the central insights that occupied Alan Watts for much of his life. The insight that the self is not something separate from the universe, looking at it from the outside, but rather something the universe is doing. A pattern, a temporary, specific, unrepeatable configuration of the same energy that has been arranging and rearranging itself since the beginning of time. Think about that for a moment. Not quickly, slowly. The way you might look at something beautiful, without immediately reaching for your phone to photograph it. Just look at it. Just sit with it. You are not a person in a universe. You are the universe, temporarily arranged into the shape of a person. The boundary between you and everything else is not a wall. It is a shoreline. And shorelines, as anyone who has stood on one knows, are not clear lines at all. They are the most alive, most dynamic, most uncertain places in the landscape, where the water meets the land, and neither is quite sure which is which. That is what you are. That is what every living thing is. The meeting place between the inside and the outside, between the personal and the universal, between the tiny, temporary, specific individual and the vast, eternal, unspecific everything. Very few people ever notice this, not because it is hidden, not because it is difficult, but because we have been so thoroughly trained to think of ourselves as separate, as alone, as cut off from the rest of existence by the thin membrane of our skin, that the alternative feels not just strange, but almost dangerous. What would happen, we wonder, if we stopped being separate? What would happen if we allowed the boundary to dissolve? Would we disappear? Would we lose ourselves? And here is the beautiful answer that Watts returned to again and again in 100 different ways, with 100 different images and stories and laughs. You cannot lose yourself by recognizing what you really are. You can only lose the illusion of yourself. The small, anxious, defended self that spends its days managing its reputation and its resources and its relationships, trying to remain intact, trying to remain safe, trying to remain in control of something that was never truly under control to begin with. That self, the ego as it is sometimes called, though the word carries so much baggage that it almost loses its meaning, that self is not what you are. It is what you are doing. A habit of organization, a way of arranging experience into a story and putting a character at the center of the story and calling that character you. Stories are wonderful things. They make sense of things. They create meaning out of the raw, unstructured flow of events. They give us a way to communicate experience to other people, to share what it is like to be alive, to feel less alone in the strange predicament of consciousness. But we make a mistake when we confuse the story for the thing it describes. We make a mistake when the map becomes more real to us than the territory, when the menu becomes more interesting than the food, when the photograph of a sunset becomes more precious than the memory of standing in the actual fading light. And we have all done this. We have all, at some point, looked up from the story of our lives, from the constant interior monologue of self-assessment and self-justification and self-promotion, and been startled by the actual world, by the way the light was falling just then on something ordinary, by the sound of rain on a surface you hadn't thought about in years, by the sudden, inexplicable sense that everything is exactly as it should be, and you had been missing it. Those moments, those brief, unscheduled, unearned moments of simply being present, those are what Watts was pointing toward. not as a destination to be reached through years of disciplined practice, though practice certainly has its value, but as something that is already here, already available, already the case. The present moment is not something you have to find. It is the only thing that is ever actually happening. Everything else, the past, the future, the plans, the regrets, the hopes, the fears, all of it is happening in the present moment. All of it is thought, occurring now. The past is a memory, which is a present experience. The future is an anticipation, which is a present experience. There is nothing except now. And now is where you are, right now, in this bed, in this room, in this body, in this breath. Breathe in and out. Feel the breath, not to control it, just to feel it. The slight coolness of the air coming in, the slight warmth of it going out, the gentle rise and fall of the chest, or the belly, or both, the small pause at the top, the small pause at the bottom. The rhythm that has been going on since the moment you were born, and will go on until the moment you die, completely without your help, completely without your supervision. You are breathing, or rather, breathing is happening.
And the difference between those two sentences is the whole distance between anxiety and peace. When we say, "I am breathing," we take credit for something the body does on its own. We insert a self into a process that was going fine without one. And we do this with almost everything. I am thinking, I am feeling, I am seeing. As though there is a little person behind the eyes, operating the controls, responsible for all of it, separate from all of it. But here is the strange part. If you try to find that person, you can't quite locate it. Where is the self that does the thinking? Not in any particular thought, because the self seems to be there before the thought, observing it. Not in the sensation of the body, because the self seems to be distinct from the body, able to comment on it. Not in any feeling, because the self seems to persist even when the feeling changes. Look for the thinker of your thoughts. Look directly, the way you might turn quickly to catch a glimpse of something you thought you saw out of the corner of your eye. And what do you find? More thoughts, more mental activity. But never the one who is doing the thinking. Never a separate, solid, independent self standing behind the process, running the show. What you find instead is the process itself, thinking happening, experiencing happening, being happening, without a separate operator, without a separate witness, without a controller who is distinct from what is being controlled. This discovery, when it lands, when it really lands, and not just as an intellectual concept, but as an actual seeing, can feel like the ground has been removed from under your feet. And in a way, it has been. The ground you were standing on was always imaginary. The solid self you thought you were standing as was always a construction, a useful fiction, a story told so convincingly that you forgot it was a story. But here is what Watts wanted us to understand. The removal of that imaginary ground is not a fall. It is a flight.
Or better yet, it is the discovery that you were never falling in the first place, because there was never anywhere to fall from. When the solid self dissolves, when the boundary between self and world becomes transparent, what is revealed is not nothing, not a void, not the annihilation that the anxious ego fears. What is revealed is the nature of what was always there, the vast, open, aware presence in which everything, including the story of the self, has always been occurring. Some people call this presence consciousness. Some call it awareness. Some call it the ground of being, or the absolute, or God, or the Tao. The name doesn't matter. The name is just another word, and words are the tools of the very mind that is trying to grasp something that is prior to all mind. What matters is the recognition, the simple, quiet, world-shifting recognition that what you fundamentally are is not the story, not the character, not the name and the history and the set of preferences and the accumulated possessions and the carefully maintained reputation. What you fundamentally are is the space in which all of that appears and disappears, the awareness that is there before the first thought and after the last. That awareness is very quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't compete with the noise of the mind's constant activity. It is simply there, the way a clear sky is there, not behind the clouds, but as the space in which the clouds appear. Remove the clouds and you don't find a different sky. You find that the sky was always cloudless at its deepest nature, that the clouds were passing through but not of it. Your true nature is like that sky. The thoughts pass through, the emotions pass through, the sensations pass through. The whole dramatic, complicated, sometimes beautiful, sometimes painful story of your life passes through.
And what remains? What is always already there before any of it and after all of it is this open, aware, undisturbed presence. Very few people ever notice this, not because it is difficult to find, but because it is too simple. We are looking for something profound and elaborate and difficult because we have been taught that important things are hard to attain. We are looking out there, in books and practices and teachings and experiences, for something that is right here, looking. And this is where something interesting happens. When you stop looking for this fundamental nature, and instead simply rest in the looking itself, something shifts. Not dramatically, not with fireworks, more like the difference between trying to remember a word and simply relaxing the effort and letting it come. The relaxation itself is the answer. The not trying is the practice. Rest now in the looking, not at anything in particular, not toward any goal or understanding. Just rest in the simple fact that there is awareness present right now, that something is here, experiencing this moment, whatever this moment contains. The sound of the words, the sensation of the body, the slight movement of the breath, all of it occurring in a field of awareness that you didn't create and don't need to maintain. It was there when you woke up this morning, before the first thought of the day arrived to claim your attention. It was there last night, in the depths of dreamless sleep, when there were no thoughts at all, no experiences at all, nothing but the perfect blank of unconscious rest. And yet you woke up. The continuity wasn't broken. Whatever you are persisted through the absence of all experience, through the nightly death that sleep resembles, and emerged again with the morning light. What is that continuity? What is it that persists through sleep, through anesthesia, through all the states in which the conscious mind, with its stories and its self-image, is completely absent? Watts would say that we don't need to answer that question. We don't need to wrap it in a theory or a doctrine or a belief system. We only need to notice it, to let it be a living question rather than a resolved one. Because the questions that stay open, the questions that we resist collapsing into easy answers, are the ones that keep the mind alive and curious and humble and awake in the deepest sense. You are alive right now. This is the most astonishing fact there is, and we walk past it every day, the way we walk past a masterpiece hanging on a familiar wall, no longer seeing it because we have decided we already know what it looks like. You are alive. Consciousness is happening. The universe is experiencing itself through your particular, unrepeatable, temporary arrangement of atoms and energy and habit and history.
And right now, in this quiet moment, in the dark, with the breath moving and the mind beginning to soften, something very close to the truth of what you are is becoming available to notice. Don't grasp at it. That would be like trying to grab water. Simply let it be there, the way it has always been there, the way it was there before you knew enough to want it. Let us think now about something else that Watts returned to often. The question of why we are so afraid. Not of specific things, though we fear many specific things, but of the underlying condition of existence itself. The chronic, subtle, almost universal anxiety of being alive that most humans carry with them from their earliest years to their last. Where does that anxiety come from? If the universe is, as Watts suggested, not an enemy but a game, not a punishment but a dance, not something we are struggling against, but something we are continuous with, then where does the fear come from? It comes, he would say, from the illusion of separateness, from the deep, conditioned, thoroughly convincing belief that we are separate beings in a world that does not fundamentally care about us, that we are, as he sometimes put it, little strangers, accidentally arrived in an alien universe, having to make our way by our own efforts against a fundamentally indifferent or hostile reality. If that is what you believe, in the deepest and most foundational sense, then anxiety is the only rational response, because a small, separate, fragile self in a large, separate, indifferent universe has a great deal to be afraid of. It can be harmed, it can fail, it can be rejected, diminished, forgotten, lost. It will, with absolute certainty, eventually die. And so the small self spends its days in a state of management, managing the risks, managing the impressions it makes on others, managing its resources, managing its health, managing its time. Always busy, always vigilant, always one step ahead of the catastrophe that seems, always, to be just one misstep away. This is exhausting. You know this because you have been doing it. We have all been doing it. Not because we are foolish, but because this is what we were taught. This is the operating system that was installed when we were very young, before we had the capacity to question it, before we could look at it from the outside and ask whether it accurately described reality, or merely described a particular, local, culturally specific way of organizing experience. But here is the strange part. The anxiety doesn't actually protect us from anything. The worry doesn't prevent what we worry about. The management doesn't produce the control it promises. We spend enormous amounts of energy trying to secure a safety that no amount of effort can guarantee, trying to achieve a certainty that is simply not on offer in a universe that is, at its core, improvisational. The universe does not have a script. It does not know in advance what it is going to do next. It is making it up as it goes. And this is not a design flaw. This is not evidence of carelessness or chaos or any of the other things our frightened minds reach for. This is the very nature of creativity, of growth, of anything genuinely alive. A river doesn't know where it is going when it sets out from the mountain. It finds its path as it goes, shaped by the terrain, responding to whatever is in its way, taking the path of least resistance not because it is lazy, but because that is what water does. And water is wise in this. By always finding the easiest way through, by never fighting the landscape, by flowing around obstacles rather than battering against them, the river gets exactly where it needs to go, which is everywhere, which is the sea. You are like that river, not a fixed thing moving toward a fixed destination, a process, a flow, something that is only itself in motion, only itself in the act of flowing, never the same from one moment to the next, and yet unmistakably continuous, unmistakably itself. The anxiety comes from trying to be a stone instead of a river, from trying to be fixed and solid and unchanging in a universe that is irreversibly, permanently, uncompromisingly in motion. We want certainty. We want solidity. We want a version of ourselves and our lives that stays the same, that can be relied upon, that won't surprise us with its capacity for change. And the universe, patiently and without malice, keeps showing us that this is not available. Change is available. Growth is available. The astonishing, ongoing creativity of existence is available. But solidity, unchangingness, the permanent security of a fixed self in a fixed world, that is not available, and never has been, and never will be. This is where Watts would often say something that sounded almost scandalous to people who hadn't thought it through. He would say that the absence of security is the most liberating thing imaginable. Very few people hear that easily.
The first response is almost always resistance. Liberating. The thing we spend our whole lives trying to overcome is liberating? But think about it. Really think about it. If security is available, then the quest for it makes sense. Then the anxiety, the vigilance, the management, the endless effort to build a life that is safe from surprise and loss, all of that makes sense. It is at least coherent, even if it is difficult. But if security is not available, if the universe is, at its fundamental level, insecure, by which I mean not threatened but open, not dangerous but uncertain, not hostile but genuinely unfinished, then the entire project of seeking security was always a mistaken project. A project that could never succeed, and therefore could never end. A task that, by its very nature, ensured that the person performing it would always feel behind, always feel that a little more was needed, a little more work, a little more control, a little more success, before they could finally relax. And here is what Watts wanted us to see. If the project was always impossible, then the effort was always wasted. And what you have been using all that effort to avoid, the openness, the uncertainty, the groundlessness of a life lived in a genuinely improvisational universe, is not the problem. It is the solution. The groundlessness is not what you fall into when you fail. The groundlessness is what you discover when you stop pretending there was always ground beneath you. And once you discover it, once you actually rest in the open, uncertain, beautifully insecure nature of existence, the anxiety doesn't make sense anymore. Not because the circumstances have changed. The circumstances are exactly as they were. The uncertainty remains. The impermanence remains. The fundamental impossibility of controlling everything remains. But you are no longer fighting it. And it turns out that almost all of the suffering was in the fighting, not in what was being fought. Let that settle. Let it find its own level in you, the way water finds its level. Don't try to believe it or not believe it. Don't try to decide whether it's true. Simply let it be present, as a possibility, as a question worth staying with, and feel what happens in the body when it is held. Does the breath change? Does the chest open a little? Does some small thing that you had been holding without knowing you were holding it begin, very slowly, to release? That release is what Watts was pointing toward. Not an idea, not a philosophy. A physiological, actual, happening in the body release of a tension that was never necessary. Now let us think about something related. The question of why we are so uncomfortable with silence, with stillness, with the simple experience of existing without doing anything in particular. Most people find it very difficult to simply sit, to be in a room without a phone, without music, without a task. Not because they don't want rest, but because the moment the external stimulus is removed, the internal noise becomes audible. And what they hear in that internal noise is not pleasant. It is the accumulated urgency of everything they are supposed to be doing, the self-criticism, the unresolved worries, the long queue of feelings that were too inconvenient to feel during the day and were shunted to this later moment that they always hoped wouldn't come. So we fill the quiet. We are extraordinarily good at filling the quiet.
We have built an entire civilization largely dedicated to ensuring that no one ever has to be in silence for more than a few minutes at a time. That there is always something to watch, something to listen to, something to read, something to buy, something to respond to, something to be informed about. And none of this is evil. Distraction is not evil. Entertainment is not evil. The desire to be connected and stimulated and engaged is not a character flaw. It is entirely human. But it is also, if it never stops, a form of avoidance. An avoidance of the silence in which, if we stayed with it long enough, we might discover something. What might we discover? This is what Watts found so interesting. Because the fear of silence, he suggested, is ultimately the fear of what is found in silence. And what is found in silence is nothing. Not the nothing of meaninglessness or emptiness or lack, but the nothing of open space, the nothing of a clear sky, the nothing out of which everything arises. We are afraid that if we sit in silence long enough, we will find that there is no one there, no solid self, no central controller, no fundamental identity that the whole enterprise of our lives has been organized around protecting and developing. And we are right to be afraid of that, in the sense that we are right about what we will find. We will find that there is no one there, in the way we have been imagining someone being there. But the discovery turns out to be not terrifying, but liberating. Because what we find in the silence, in the absence of the solid self, is not absence. We find presence. We find this vast, quiet, open awareness that was always there, but was always being obscured by the noise of the self, defending itself, explaining itself, maintaining itself. It is like cleaning a window. You thought the window was the world. You thought the streaks and smudges and marks on the glass were part of a landscape. And then the window is cleaned, and suddenly there is just the view, just the world, and the glass is invisible, and everything is more spacious and more clear and more beautiful than you remembered it. That is the promise of silence. That is what meditation practices across cultures and centuries have been pointing toward. Not the achievement of some exotic state, not the acquisition of some special experience, simply the cleaning of the window, simply the removal of the noise that was obscuring what was always plainly there. Tonight, in this quiet, the window is being cleaned. Not by effort, not by discipline, simply by the fact that you have stopped for a little while, adding more noise. Simply by the fact that you are here in the dark, with nothing required of you, letting the day's residue settle and clear. And as it settles, notice what is underneath. Notice the awareness that is present before any particular thought claims it. Notice the spaciousness that is there between the thoughts, in the gaps, in the pauses. Notice that the space between thoughts is not empty in the way a blank page is empty. It has a quality to it, a kind of alert, interested, open quality that is both deeply restful and quietly alive. That quality is your fundamental nature. It doesn't have a name. It doesn't need one. Names are for things that are separate from us, that we need to refer to in their absence. This is not separate from you. This is not absent. This is what you are, right now, in this moment, before the next thought arrives. Let us stay here for a moment. Just here. Just this. The breath moving, the awareness present, the room around you, the night outside, the world turning gently in the dark. And underneath all of it, this quiet, this open, this simply and entirely sufficient now. Now let us think about something that Watts approached from many directions over many years. The question of what we mean when we say the word I. Not in the grammatical sense, not I as the subject of a verb, but I in the deep sense. The I that feels like the most certain thing there is. The I that persists through all the changes of life, the changing body, the changing beliefs, the changing relationships, the changing circumstances, and seems to remain the same. Who is that I? What is it made of? Where does it begin and end?
If you go looking for it carefully, systematically, without deciding in advance what you will find, you discover something very strange. The I seems to be located somewhere behind the eyes, in the head, in the center of experience. But when you try to look at it directly, when you try to turn the eye of attention on the one who is doing the attending, it keeps moving. It keeps being the subject rather than the object. Every time you try to make it an object of observation, it slips back into being the observer. This is not a failure of attention. This is the nature of the I. It is always the looker, never the looked at, always the knower, never the known. And when you persist in this inquiry, when you sit with the question of where the looker is, without reaching for an easy answer, you begin to notice something. The boundary of the I is not where you thought it was. The edge of the self, the place where you end and the world begins, is much less clear, much more permeable, much more uncertain than the everyday feeling of being a separate individual would suggest. Where do you end? At the skin? But the skin is constantly exchanging molecules with the air. You are breathing in the world and breathing out yourself in every breath. The boundary is not the skin. Is it the nervous system? But the nervous system is responding to signals from the environment, shaped by the environment, inseparable from the environment in its functioning. The nervous system does not stop at the skull. It extends, through the senses, into the whole field of experience. Is the boundary the mind? But the mind is made of language, and language is not something you invented privately. It is something you received from the culture, from other people, from the vast human project of making sense of experience that was going on for hundreds of thousands of years before you were born. The thoughts you think are in large part thoughts that were already there, waiting to be thought, because you learned to think in a particular language with a particular set of conceptual categories. The I, when examined carefully, turns out to be not a thing, but a transaction. Not a noun, but a verb. Not something you have, but something you do. Or, better yet, something that is being done by the whole universe through the particular configuration that is your nervous system and your body and your history. This is what Watts found so important to communicate, not as a philosophical position, not as a doctrine to be believed, but as an actual looking, an actual investigation that anyone with sufficient patience and honesty could undertake and arrive at the same conclusion. We are not lonely travelers in an alien universe. We are expressions of the universe, the way a wave is an expression of the ocean. The wave seems separate. It has a distinct shape, a distinct height, a distinct moment of arising and passing away. But it is not made of anything different from the ocean. It is not separate from the ocean. The ocean is doing the waving, and when the wave subsides, the ocean hasn't lost anything. The ocean is just being the ocean again, which is what it was the whole time. You are a wave. You are the universe waving at itself. And the moment of your arising, your birth, your life, your particular temporary configuration of awareness, is the universe doing something specific and unrepeatable, experiencing itself from this particular angle, through these particular eyes, with these particular memories and capacities and confusions. When you die, the wave subsides, but the ocean doesn't die. The ocean is still doing whatever the ocean does, and whether or not there is something it is like to be the ocean apart from its individual waves, whether or not consciousness persists in some form beyond the individual wave, that is a genuine mystery, and Watts was honest about it being a mystery. He didn't want to sell you a comfortable answer to the question of death. He wanted to shift the question itself. The question of what happens when we die is
in large part, the wrong question. It assumes that what we are is the wave. And if what we are is the wave, then when the wave subsides, there is loss, there is ending, there is the tragedy of ceasing to exist. But if what we are is the ocean, if the wave is just a temporary mode of the ocean, a way the ocean organizes itself for a while, then when the wave subsides, nothing has been lost. The energy of the wave doesn't disappear. It disperses into the ocean, which was always what it was. The configuration ends. The waving continues. This is not a consolation prize. This is not a story told to make dying easier to accept, though it may do that. This is what honest attention to the nature of the self actually reveals. Not through wishful thinking, but through careful, patient, courageous looking. You have been doing that looking tonight, maybe without knowing it, maybe just by being here in the quiet, letting the usual noise settle, letting the usual stories pause. In that pause, in that settling, something is available that is not available in the ordinary noise of the day. Let us think about the ocean a little more. Because Watts returned to it so often, and because it really is one of the best metaphors available for the kind of understanding he was trying to share. Stand at the edge of the ocean. Look at the waves. Each one is different. Each one has its own character, its own height and shape, its own way of arriving and breaking and pulling back. And each one is obviously, completely, unambiguously the ocean.
There is no question about whether the wave and the ocean are the same substance. They are visibly, obviously, entirely the same substance. The wave is not like the ocean. The wave is the ocean. And the wave doesn't worry about being separate from the ocean. It doesn't spend its brief existence anxious about whether the ocean still cares about it, whether the ocean will be there when it's gone, whether it has justified its existence sufficiently to deserve to be a wave. The wave just waves. It does what waves do, with complete and uncomplicated commitment, and then it subsides, and the ocean is as full as it ever was. This is the life that Watts was pointing toward. Not a life without thought, not a life without care, not a life without the full engagement of all the human faculties, but a life lived from the understanding that the one living it is not fundamentally separate from everything else. A life lived as the wave, knowing itself to be the ocean. When you live like that, something changes in the quality of every experience. Not the experiences themselves, necessarily. The difficulties are still difficult. The losses are still painful. The confusions are still confusing. But there is a kind of spaciousness around them that wasn't there before. A background awareness that this too is the ocean moving. This too is the universe doing what it does. This too is part of something so vast and so continuous that no individual wave, however turbulent, however brief, can diminish it. And in that spaciousness, in that background awareness, there is something that functions very much like peace. Not the peace of things going well, not the peace of having gotten what you wanted or avoided what you feared. The peace of not being fundamentally at war with reality. The peace of recognizing, at however subtle a level, that you belong here, that you are not an alien in this universe, but an expression of it, that the universe made you as surely as it made everything else, with the same fundamental material, in the same fundamental spirit, for the same fundamental reason. What reason? Well, this is where the mystery deepens and the language starts to fail. Because the universe doesn't have reasons in the way that humans have reasons. Reasons are things that come before actions, plans that precede outcomes, intentions that predict behaviors. And the universe, being prior to all of that, prior to all minds and their reasons, cannot be said to have a reason in any familiar sense. But it can be said to have something like a character, something like a style.
And the style of the universe, as best as anyone has ever been able to observe it, is this. It seems to delight in complexity, in differentiation, in the emergence of increasingly intricate patterns from simpler ones, in the arising, moment to moment, of things that are genuinely new. The universe made galaxies out of hydrogen. It made stars out of galaxies. It made heavier elements in the hearts of stars. It made planets from the remnants of dying stars. On at least one of those planets, it made life. From that life, it made consciousness. From consciousness, it made the capacity to wonder, to ask questions about the nature of existence, to lie in the dark in the middle of the night and think about what it means to be. And that capacity, that wondering, is not an anomaly. It is not an accident. It is the universe doing what the universe does, becoming more complex, more differentiated, more aware of itself. You are the universe becoming aware of itself. Right now, in this moment, in this breath, in this quiet wondering. Very few people ever notice this. Very few people stop long enough, go quiet enough, allow themselves to be present enough to feel the extraordinary nature of the ordinary fact that they exist and are aware of existing. But you are noticing it now, in whatever way you are noticing it, clearly or dimly, intellectually or in the body, as an idea or as a felt sense. Something is registering. Something is being recognized. Some very old and very quiet part of you is saying, yes, this is what I always suspected, but could never quite put into words. And that recognition, that yes, is where Watts wanted to arrive. Not at a system of thought, not at a set of beliefs to be adopted, but at a yes that comes from the whole being, not just the mind. A yes that is also a relaxation, a softening, a sense of coming home to something that was always home. Let the body reflect that now. Let the yes be physical. Let the breath deepen. Let the muscles release. Let the jaw unclench and the hands open and the space behind the eyes soften. You are home. You have always been home. The strangeness and the difficulty and the long, exhausting project of trying to be someone who deserves to be here, all of that can rest now. You are here. The universe made you. The universe is doing you. And the universe is very, very good at what it does. Now let us think about something more specific. The question of meaning. The question that haunts so many lives, especially in the modern world, where the traditional structures that once provided meaning, religion, community, fixed social roles, have become unstable or unavailable for many people. We need meaning. This is not a philosophical luxury. Humans who lack a sense of meaning in their lives suffer. They become depressed, anxious, hollow. They go through the motions. They function but do not flourish. The need for meaning is as real as the need for food or warmth or companionship. And yet meaning is very strange, because it is not a thing in the world. There are no meaning particles. There is no substance called significance that certain events contain and others don't. Meaning is something the mind does to experience.
It is a relationship, a pattern of connection, a way of understanding one thing in terms of another. And here is the question that Watts pressed on. If meaning is something the mind does, rather than something it finds, then the question is not where to find meaning, but how to do it. And the answer, when you look carefully, is that meaning arises naturally, spontaneously, without effort, when you are fully present with experience. The moments in life that feel most meaningful are, almost always, the moments of full presence. The moments when you were completely here. Not partly here and partly in the past or the future. Not partly here and partly managing your image or calculating your advantages, but simply, entirely, wholly here.
think of such a moment in your own life. It doesn't need to be dramatic. A conversation in which you were genuinely listening. A meal that you were genuinely tasting. A piece of music that stopped your thinking and made you just hear. A view that stopped your thinking and made you just see. A moment with someone you love, in which you were not thinking about anything except how much you loved them. In those moments, meaning is not a question. In those moments, the question doesn't even arise. Because the question of whether life has meaning comes from being outside life, looking at it from a distance, evaluating it. And in moments of full presence, there is no outside. There is no evaluating distance. There is only the thing itself, complete, sufficient, entirely real. That is what Watts meant when he talked about the meaning of life being in the living of it, not in the thinking about it, not in the achievement of goals, though goals have their value, not in the accumulation of experiences or possessions or relationships, though all of these can be wonderful, but in the quality of presence brought to whatever is happening.
A simple meal, eaten with full attention, is more meaningful than an elaborate achievement accomplished while distracted. A brief conversation, truly listened to, is more meaningful than a long relationship conducted at arm's length. A single moment of genuine contact with the reality of being alive, of being aware, of being here, is more meaningful than a lifetime of searching for meaning in the future. And the reason this matters? The reason it is important to understand, and not just to nod at as a pleasant idea, is that the future never arrives, not as the future. When the future becomes real, it becomes the present, it becomes now. And if you have been in the habit of living in the future, of deferring presence to some later moment when things will be better, when you will have achieved what needs to be achieved, when you will finally be able to relax and enjoy what you have, then when the future arrives and becomes the present, you will still be in the future. Because the habit doesn't end just because circumstances change. The habit continues, and the present keeps slipping by, unlived, unnoticed, like a language you never learned to speak. Tonight, right now, is an opportunity to speak that language. Not eloquently, not perfectly, not even fluently. Just to notice that the present is here, that this moment is fully real, that the experience of being alive that is happening right now, the body warm, the breath moving, the mind beginning to soften at the edges, the way ice softens when you hold it. This is not a lesser experience than some future experience you are planning, or some past experience you are missing. This is it. This is the life. This is what the universe is doing right now, through you, as you. And it is enough. It is more than enough. It is, if you can let yourself receive it, extraordinary. Extraordinarily ordinary, which is the deepest kind of extraordinary there is. Let us think, as we move deeper into the quiet of this night, about the relationship between the human mind and sleep. About what sleep actually is, what it tells us about consciousness, about identity, about the nature of experience. Every night, something remarkable happens. The person you have been all day, the one with the name and the history and the concerns and the plans, the one who has been managing and performing and deciding and feeling, that person goes away. Not permanently, not forever, but away, somewhere, or perhaps nowhere, into a gap in experience so complete that there is no one left to experience it as a gap. And then the person comes back. In the morning, with the opening of the eyes, the whole construction resumes. The name reasserts itself. The history repopulates. The concerns return. The personality reinstalls itself like a program loading its startup. But here is what is interesting about that gap. Here is what is interesting about the nightly disappearance of the self. Nothing was harmed by it. Everything was, in some deep sense, helped by it. The body that went into the gap and came out the other side is more rested, more functional, more capable of being fully present in the day than it was before. The mind that was absent for those hours of deep sleep comes back sharper, more clear, more open, as though the absence of the self was not a deficit, but a kind of nutrition, as though consciousness needs, periodically, to dissolve back into its source, as though the wave needs to subside into the ocean, to gather itself, to be refreshed by the contact with what it ultimately is before it rises again. This is what sleep is. This is what the body knows, even when the mind resists, that the dissolution of the self is not death, but renewal, that the dropping of the day's identity is not loss, but rest, that the return to the groundless ground, to the open awareness that is prior to the self, is the most restorative thing possible. And you are approaching that now. With every breath, with every softening of the body, with every thought that arises and passes without being grasped at and followed, you are approaching the edge of that dissolution, the place where the wave begins to subside. Let it come. Don't fight it. Don't try to hold on to the last thread of wakefulness, the last thread of the day's thoughts, the last thread of the self that has been so busy all day. Let it go. Let the wave return to the ocean. Let the self dissolve into sleep. Let the awareness that is you open back out into the awareness that is everything. You will come back. You always come back. The morning will find you. The self will reassemble. The day will begin again with all of its demands and its pleasures and its complications. But that is tomorrow, and tomorrow can take care of itself. Right now, let the self rest. Let the day go. Let the waves subside. In the philosophy of Alan Watts, the end of every day is a small reminder of the end of all days. The going to sleep is a rehearsal for the going to death. And rather than being frightening, rather than being something to struggle against, it can be understood as a practice, a nightly practice of dying and being reborn, of letting go and returning, of trusting the process enough to stop managing it for a few hours. Every night you practice this. Every night you surrender the self to sleep. And every morning the universe gives it back, not because you earned it, not because you were good enough or disciplined enough or worthy enough, simply because that is what the universe does. That is what life does. It continues. It renews. It begins again. And so every morning is a small grace. Every morning is the universe saying, here it is again. Your name, your history, your relationships, your work and your worries and your particular, specific, unrepeatable way of being alive. Here it is, returned to you, refreshed, ready for another day. You don't control that. You never did. You simply receive it. You simply open your eyes in the morning and find that you are still here, still you, still being given the gift of another ordinary, extraordinary day. Tonight, as you drift towards sleep, receive the trust that that implies. The universe is going to take care of the continuity. The universe is going to make sure the morning comes and that you are there to meet it. You don't need to hold it together. You don't need to stay awake to ensure your own existence. You can let go. Completely and without reservation, you can let go. And as you let go, as the body grows heavier and the breath grows slower and the thoughts grow less insistent and the day grows more distant, let the last thing you hold, if you hold anything, be gratitude. Not for any particular thing, not gratitude with an object, but a kind of ambient, objectless gratitude for the simple fact of being, for having been alive today, for having had, in the middle of whatever the day contained, moments of real experience, moments of genuine feeling,
moments of actual contact with the world and with the people in it, and with the strange, improbable, unrepeatable fact of being conscious on a small blue planet in an enormous universe that has been going on without needing any particular thing from you. Gratitude for the breath, for the heartbeat, for the fact that your body has been going about its magnificent work all day without requiring any of your attention. Digesting, circulating, regenerating, doing 1,000 things you will never be aware of, all of them essential, all of them happening in the dark of your interior, with a competence and a dedication that no human effort could improve upon. Gratitude for the night, for the dark, for the quiet, for this particular moment in the history of the universe, this exact, specific, already over by the time you notice it moment, which is also somehow the whole universe, complete and sufficient and real. Gratitude for the stars, even if you can't see them right now, even if they are above the clouds and above the ceiling and above the whole weight of the ordinary world. They are there. They have been there for billions of years. They will be there when you wake up. The universe is not going anywhere. The stars are not going anywhere. Everything will be exactly as strange and as beautiful and as improbable in the morning as it is right now, maybe more beautiful, because in the morning there will be light. And light is the universe making itself visible, making itself knowable, making itself available to these particular eyes, in this particular body, on this particular morning that hasn't happened yet, but is already on its way. The morning is coming, quietly, steadily. The earth is turning toward it right now. You can't feel the turning, but it is happening. At 1,000 miles an hour at the equator, slower where you are, but happening, always happening, the great wheel turning, the morning coming. And before it comes, there is this. There is the night. There is the dark. There is the quiet. There is the breath moving in and out of a body that is growing heavier and more at rest with every passing moment. There is awareness, open and quiet, like a clear sky above the settling of the day. And in that awareness, nothing is wrong. Nothing needs to be fixed. Nothing needs to be worried about or planned for or understood. Everything is exactly as it is, which is exactly as it needs to be, which is to say, the universe, doing what it does in all its improbable specificity and beauty. You are part of that. You are that in your particular temporary arrangement. And right now, that arrangement is at rest, resting in the universe that made it, resting in the night that receives it, resting in the long, deep, patient quiet that is the universe's truest nature, beneath all its noise and light and activity. Let the quiet take you now. Let the night take you. Let the sleep that has been waiting patiently, just at the edge of consciousness, come closer. Let it come all the way. Let it be complete. You have been thinking long enough today. You have been doing long enough. You have been being someone long enough. For a little while, just be. Just the breath and the dark and the quiet and the vast open awareness that is your fundamental nature, resting in itself, which is to say, resting in everything. This is the secret of life that most people never realize. It is not a secret that can be told and fully transmitted in words. It is something that has to be lived, has to be felt, has to be arrived at through one's own experience. But the direction can be pointed, and the direction is here. Not there, not then, not when. Here. Now. This. This moment, however ordinary it seems, is the whole thing. The whole life, lived fully, is available in any single moment of genuine presence. The universe, in all its vastness and complexity and mystery, is available in the simple fact of being aware right now. And you are aware right now. Even as the thoughts slow and the body deepens into rest, awareness is present. It doesn't go away when the thoughts go away. It is there in the silence between thoughts, the way a clear sky is there in the silence between clouds. Unmoved, open, quietly, absolutely here. Rest in that. Be that. You already are that. The thinking can stop now. The managing can stop. The performing and the planning and the worrying can stop. Not forever, only for tonight. Only for the space of sleep, which is the universe's way of saying, rest now. You have done enough for today. Tomorrow will be another day. The universe will see to it. Trust the universe.
Not as a philosophical position, not as a belief to be adopted, but simply as the practical recognition that the universe has been running this show for 13.8 billion years without your help, and it is probably going to be okay tonight without your vigilance. You can sleep. You can surrender. You can let the waves subside into the ocean that was always what you are. The stars are turning overhead, slowly, patiently, with no concern for what they illuminate or what they leave in shadow. Orion moving across the sky in his ancient pattern. The Milky Way wheeling in its billion-year arc. All of it going on, steady and beautiful, and completely indifferent to whether anyone is awake to see it. The world will be there when you wake up. Your life will be there. The people you love will be there. The challenges will be there. The beauty will be there. Everything that is real and important and yours will be there, exactly where you left it, ready for the attention you will bring to it tomorrow. But that is tomorrow. And this is tonight. And tonight there is only this. The breath, the dark, the quiet, the open awareness resting in itself. The universe being the universe in its particular configuration called you. Resting. 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 The breath going in and out. In and out. Slow and quiet and automatic. The heartbeat steady in the chest. The body warm and held and completely at ease. All thoughts dissolving now. All concerns dissolving. All plans dissolving. All the effort of being someone dissolving, gently, like the last color in a sky after sunset, fading not into nothing, but into the deeper, richer dark that was always behind it. You are here. You are safe. You are held by everything that has ever been, by the long chain of causes that made this moment possible, by the universe that spent 13.8 billion years arranging itself into something that could lie in the dark and breathe and be aware of breathing. That is what you are. And tonight, that is enough. More than enough. Everything. Sleep now. The universe will take care of the rest. Good night.